All right, so get ready. It's time for your own personal deep dive into happiness.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
We are going to unpack excerpts from the Happiness Project, the book by Gretchen Rubin.
Oh, yeah, where she chronicles her year-long experiment to kind of like boost her own happiness.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting? She wasn't starting out miserable or anything. Like, she was already pretty happy relatively,
Yeah.
but there was just this nagging feeling like she wasn't quite hitting, her full potential for joy. Have you ever felt that way?
I mean, I think a lot of people feel that way, actually. You get comfortable, you
Right.
get in your routine, you forget to like actively cultivate happiness.
Yeah.
And so she was curious about if she could like intentionally become happier.
Hmm.
And if so, how? So she did a ton of research. I mean, she went deep. She was exploring philosophy and psychology and all those self-help books and even, those little fortunes you get in fortune cookies.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Like, she was finding inspiration everywhere, even in a fortune cookie. Remember that quote, look for happiness under your own roof.
Yes.
So simple, but it's so powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
But before she even dove into all these experiments, like, she had to kind of grapple with this big question, right? Like,
Yeah.
can we even, like, make ourselves happier? Like, isn't happiness, like, mostly just our genes or our circumstances?
Right. And that's where like this set point theory comes in. That
Yeah.
basically says we all have this baseline level of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it is largely determined by genetics. But, and this is important, Gretchen's research really revealed that while genes do play a role, our actions can actually have a huge impact on our happiness levels.
Oh, okay. So we have some control.
You do. You're not just stuck at a certain level of happiness forever. You have the power to shift it. Like you can turn that dial.
That's empowering to know. So Gretchen, no, she wasn't dealing with depression.
Right.
And she even says that, like, therapy can be so invaluable, especially for those who are. Her
Okay.
focus was really just on boosting happiness, in a life that was already relatively content.
So how did she even go about this grand experiment?
She basically created, like, a structured approach, and
So-
she called it, of course, her Happiness Project.
I love that.
You can think of it kind of like a framework for intentional life change, right? She starts with this deep self-reflection, so figuring out what really brought her joy and what drained her energy. And then from there, she crafted very specific resolutions. You can kind of think of them like mini experiments, all designed to kind of boost her happiness in different areas of her life.
Oh, so smart. And like she meticulously tracked her progress too.
She did, yeah. Like a scientist in her own life.
I love that.
Yeah.
So like her book is her story, but the principles that she uncovers, those are universal.
Yes.
Your own happiness project would look completely different, which is what's so cool about this. We're not talking about a one-size-fits-all solution here.
Yeah.
It's a set of tools, insights, and you can personalize it, right? To make your own path to greater happiness.
Exactly. And she didn't go in blindly either.
Like before she took action, she came up with these guiding principles, like her 12 commandments.
Okay.
And then this set of secrets of adulthood, those hilarious and relatable life lessons that we all seem to learn along the way. You can kind of think of them like little reminders, right?
Yeah.
To help her stay focused and grounded.
Oh, okay, get ready to laugh because some of my favorites are people don't notice your mistakes as much as you think.
Yes.
And over-the-counter medicines are very effective.
So true.
They're so true.
They're like, why didn't anybody tell me this stuff earlier?
Right. Like, we all need that.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to these guiding principles, Gretchen, she created, what is it, a resolutions chart?
Yes. Yeah, it's like a monthly action plan. And it had these like specific, really achievable goals. So she wasn't trying to overhaul her whole life at once, right? It was all about these small, concrete steps
Yeah.
that over time could lead to these big changes.
Oh, so smart. Right. It's like you're breaking down these huge goals into those manageable chunks. But, even though she was already pretty happy, she was met with a lot of skepticism.
Oh, yeah.
People questioned why she even needed this whole happiness project if she was already content.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of shows this misconception that you only need to work on happiness if you're unhappy.
Right. Like if you're not miserable, then you don't need to work on your happiness.
Right.
But Gretchen's journey really challenges that because she believes everyone can benefit from intentionally cultivating more joy, even if they're in a good place already. Remember that story about the cocktail party?
Oh, yeah.
She was telling somebody about her happiness project,
Yeah.
and the person literally scoffed at her.
It's so funny. It's like people are so resistant to, like, actively pursuing happiness.
Yeah.
But Gretchen, she wasn't deterred, right? She went right into that resolutions chart.
She did, yeah.
And she's starting with some, back to basics goals for January. Things like going to sleep earlier and tackling a nagging task.
Hmm.
Simple, but those little foundational habits, I think they can make a big difference in our energy and our mood.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm.
And that brings us to one of Gretchen's key insights. Boosting energy is crucial for happiness.
Okay.
She realized that both physical and mental energy are like the foundation for feeling good and like taking positive action.
Mm.
So how did she boost her energy?
Well, first up was sleep.
Of course.
She was committed to turning off the lights earlier, even if it meant she was going to miss out on, like, a movie or, that last email.
Mm-hmm.
We all know sleep is important,
We do.
but how many of us actually, like, prioritize it?
Right.
She found that even small adjustments to her sleep schedule made a huge impact on her mood and her energy levels throughout the whole day.
Yeah, it's one of those things we tend to sacrifice.
Yeah.
We think we can like catch up later.
Right.
But consistent good sleep is like an investment in your well-being. But she didn't stop there. She even tackled exercise,
Oh.
despite her self-proclaimed love for lounging around.
She's like me.
Yeah, a lot of us, right. So she decided to try, have you heard of this? Super slow strength training.
I have heard of that.
Yeah,
20 minutes once a week.
that's it.
Okay, so I have to admit, when I read about this, I was like, really?
Right.
Could something that short and, frankly, easy really make a difference?
I know.
Because we've all seen those, like, intense workout routines.
Oh yeah, that promise you amazing results.
But she had her dad's encouragement, and she gave it a shot.
Mm.
And what happened?
And she loved it.
She did.
It's a great example of how sometimes the simplest solutions can be the most effective. It wasn't about like punishing herself with these grueling workouts. It was about finding something sustainable, right?
Yeah.
A sustainable way to move her body and to boost her energy. And I mean, the fact that it only took 20 minutes once a week made it so much easier to stick to.
Totally, totally. It's all about, what works for you, right? Okay, so her next adventure takes her into the realm of, the often dreaded clutter.
Clutter, yes.
But this wasn't just about tidying up, it was about tackling the emotional baggage that comes with all her stuff. She dove headfirst into clearing out her apartment.
She did.
What she discovered was surprising.
It was, yeah. She found that it wasn't just about creating a more organized space. It was about clearing mental and emotional space, too. And she felt this unexpected exhilaration, like she was conquering this mountain of stuff, like reclaiming that sense of control over her environment.
That's so powerful, and she's so honest about the challenges.
Oh, yeah.
Remember, like, the freebie clutter?
Yes.
Like that lamp that she almost accepted?
Even though she didn't need it?
Even though she didn't need it. Or the crutch clutter, right? The worn-out clothes she held on to.
Yes.
And her mom hated them.
Oh, yeah. Even though they didn't spark joy. We've all got those things.
Oh, yeah, we all do. For reasons we can't even explain.
I know. It's like we cling to them. It's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and one of my favorite anecdotes is about her container store solution for toy clutter.
Oh, yes, the container store.
So she bought these big, clear canisters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she just started stuffing them with toys. Not only did it solve the clutter problem, it looked pretty stylish, too.
It did, yeah. It's such a simple solution, but it's so effective.
Totally.
And she mentions this interesting thing. She's like, if you assign highly specific places for everything rather than just like general areas, it can actually help with happiness,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's that feeling of control, and knowing exactly where things are, I think, can actually bring that little spark of joy to your everyday life.
Totally. And then there's the hilarious 4 thermometer syndrome.
Oh, yes. That was a good one.
So she finds 4 thermometers while she's decluttering because every time she couldn't find one, she just bought a new one.
We've all done that.
It's so relatable. It's funny, but it also makes you think, like, how much stuff are we all just accumulating unnecessarily?
I know. It's a really lighthearted way to illustrate a really common problem. And here's a little twist, too. So despite all of her efforts with this decluttering, her husband didn't really acknowledge her achievements.
Oh, no.
It's a good reminder, though, that sometimes, even though our efforts go unnoticed by others, that internal satisfaction we get from making a positive change, that's what truly matters.
Here's a good lesson. So after she tackles energy and clutter, Gretchen sets her sights on another big one, marriage. She knows a strong marriage, it's like a cornerstone of happiness. But she's honest about, her own tendency to blame her husband for things.
Mm. Mm.
And this is where her commandment, there is only love, comes into play.
Yes.
It's about choosing to focus on the positive even when things are tough.
Mm-hmm.
She tells a really great story about her friend who uses this mantra to deal with, like, a difficult boss.
Oh, interesting.
Instead of dwelling on the negativity, she'd just remind herself, there is only love.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your perspective, right?
Yes.
And choosing to see the good even when it's hard.
Hmm.
And so Gretchen, she applied this to her marriage.
Yeah.
She was trying to consciously avoid nagging, she wasn't expecting constant praise, and she was learning to fight fairly. It's about taking responsibility for your own happiness within the relationship rather than, like, relying on your partner to make you happy.
Right.
Which brings us to the snoring incident.
Oh, yeah.
Classic example of how this negativity bias can sneak in and sabotage our happiness. Gretchen found herself getting so fixated on her husband's snoring that it started to, like, overshadow all the good parts of their relationship.
It's like that one little annoyance.
Yeah.
Right, and it just gets magnified.
Yeah.
And you forget about everything else.
Yeah. And you forget about all the good stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a reminder that we need to be mindful of that negativity bias and actively cultivate gratitude, right, for the positive things in our relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of mindfulness, this is where Gretchen starts to realize that she needs to pay attention to, like, all her feelings, the good, the bad, and what she calls the right,
Oh.
in order to cultivate true happiness. And by feeling right, she means making sure that her actions are lining up with her values. She tells this story about her friend who asked her, like, why she even needed a happiness project if she was already happy. And it kind of highlights how sometimes we just go through the motions or
Yes.
without really thinking about what matters to us. Have you ever felt that way?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's about living intentionally and not on autopilot.
Yes, exactly. And this realization leads her to the importance of what she calls being Gretchen.
Oh, being Gretchen, I like that.
It's about accepting her own preferences and not forcing herself to enjoy things that she genuinely doesn't.
It's a good reminder that, like, we don't have to conform to what we think we should enjoy.
Yeah.
Happiness is about, like, embracing your authentic self, quirks and all. And speaking of embracing authenticity, that's where Gretchen's quest for fun comes in. She's like, I'm going to find these sparks of joy in everyday life.
And she kicks it off by embracing one of her, what she calls guilty pleasures,
Oh, what is it?
Stephen King novels.
I love Stephen King.
She tells this great story about a conversation with a literary agent, and she admits that she loves Stephen King.
Yeah.
And it seems like a small thing.
Yeah.
But I think it highlights the importance of being true to yourself, even if your pace doesn't always align with what's considered, like, highbrow.
I love that. So relatable, because we've all had those moments where we hesitate to share our true interests for fear of being judged.
For sure.
But embracing those authentic passions, it can unlock, like, a whole new level of joy.
Absolutely. Okay. And this brings us to Gretchen's creation, and this is just delightful. It's a children's literature book club.
Children's literature book club.
Get ready for this. Pure whimsy. She and her friends get together and they discuss these classic children's books, and they go all out. Themed food, drinks.
Oh, wow.
So, like, for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, they had Turkish Delight.
Oh, fun.
And for Alice in Wonderland, they had mock turtle soup
What?
and treacle tart.
That's amazing.
It's like stepping back into childhood and rediscovering the joy of reading,
I love it. It's such a great example of how we can tap into those passions from childhood to bring us joy as adults.
Yeah.
And it just reminds us that happiness can really be found in the simplest things, like getting together with friends and talking about a book.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered energy, clutter, marriage, and fun. What's next on Gretchen's happiness agenda?
So she realizes she's often focused on what's wrong rather than what's right. And she wants to tackle this feeling of contentment head on. So she comes up with a challenge, and she calls it Pollyanna Week.
Pollyanna Week? What is that?
So for one whole week, she commits to finding the good in every situation.
Wow.
No matter how small or challenging it is, it's like this deliberate attempt to retrain her brain to focus on the positive and to challenge that negativity bias we all have.
It sounds like a really tough challenge. Did she succeed?
It definitely wasn't easy. Gretchen's really honest about her struggles to maintain this Pollyanna attitude, especially with all those little, like, everyday annoyances we all face.
Right.
But she also discovers that if you can find humor in those situations, it can be a really powerful antidote to that negativity. Remember that incident at the soup shop?
Oh, yeah.
This woman in front of her is taking forever to decide on a soup,
Oh, gosh.
sampling every single flavor.
Yeah.
It's like that would irritate anyone, right? But Gretchen finds a way to laugh about it.
Okay.
She calls it a whole genre of entertainment.
Yeah.
The indecisive soup sampler.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. It's like,
Wow.
oh, those times when I'm, in the grocery store checkout line and the person in front of me can't find their loyalty card.
Right.
And you're just like, oh.
Hmm.
But you got to find a way to laugh about it, right?
True. It can really shift your whole perspective.
Yeah.
And then there's this personality test that Gretchen takes, and she discovers that she scores low on agreeableness.
Oh, so she's not like a mean person or anything.
No, no, no.
Okay.
It just means that she's comfortable expressing her opinions and doesn't always prioritize being nice.
Okay.
And she's honest about her tendency to be a little combative, which is something that she decides to address head on.
So how does she tackle that combative side?
So she decides to give up alcohol.
Okay.
Now, this might not be for everyone,
Right.
but she finds that it makes her happier. She realizes she doesn't really enjoy the taste, she doesn't really enjoy the effects, and she would rather just spend those calories on, delicious food.
That makes sense.
It's about knowing yourself and what truly brings you joy. And she even contrasts this with, Winston Churchill, who famously loved his champagne.
Right, yeah.
It's a good reminder that happiness is individual, and what works for one person might not work for another.
Totally. So then Gretchen, she sets herself this challenge, and this one really resonated with me,
Oh, what is it?
to give positive reviews.
Oh, wow.
I know. It kind of goes against her, natural inclination to be critical, but she wants to challenge herself to be more, enthusiastic and supportive.
Yeah, it's like she's really taking on that negativity bias, huh?
And it's interesting because she points out that studies show that people who criticize are often seen as, smarter and more discerning.
Oh, interesting.
It's like there's this weird cultural reward for being negative.
Right.
But Gretchen, she's determined to break that pattern and really focus on giving that positive feedback, even if it feels awkward at first. And she realizes it's not just about making herself feel better. It's also about brightening someone else's day.
That's such a great point. It's about recognizing that our happiness can really have this ripple effect on others, And speaking of which, as Gretchen keeps going with her happiness project, she starts noticing that her efforts are, impacting her family in a positive way.
It's like her happiness is contagious.
It is.
She notices that her husband is more patient, he's more helpful around the house, and her daughters are more cheerful and cooperative.
Oh, wow.
And her husband, he even starts talking about happiness,
Oh, interesting.
in a way he never did before. And she overhears him explaining to her daughter that even small things can make you happy. It's like he's kind of absorbing some of those lessons from her project,
It's really sweet to see that her happiness is influencing those around her.
Yeah.
It reinforces that idea that our emotions can have a big impact, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So why not spread positivity? Now, remember that resolutions chart Gretchen created at the beginning of the year.
Oh.
The one with those monthly action plans?
Yeah.
Well, she found that it was so crucial for staying on track.
It's like having that visual reminder, right?
Right.
Of the changes you're making, like a system for, holding yourself accountable.
Exactly. Gretchen reflects, and she says the hardest part of her happiness project wasn't actually making those resolutions. It was following through on them consistently.
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
It's such a common struggle. We get all excited about making changes, but the real work is in maintaining those changes over time.
So true. But Gretchen's journey, it proves that it is possible to make those positive changes that last. And as she's wrapping up this year-long experiment, she comes to this really powerful realization. Happiness is an ongoing project.
It's not like a destination you reach.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're done.
Yeah, okay.
It takes self-awareness, intentional action. You got to be willing to experiment.
Yeah.
It's all about making those choices that align with your values, that bring you joy.
And Gretchen's first splendid truth really encapsulates this. So to be happy, I need to think about feeling good, feeling bad, and feeling right. in an atmosphere of growth.
Mm.
It's about paying attention to all of our emotions,
Right.
making those choices that feel authentic, and then creating that environment that supports our growth and well-being.
And as we move into the second half of Gretchen's happiness journey, you'll see she goes even deeper, exploring themes of mindfulness, purpose, and connection.
Okay.
And remember, while this deep dive is all for you, the listener, the goal isn't to, replicate exactly what Gretchen did. It's about taking the valuable insights she's uncovered and then applying them to your own journey.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So as we continue, I encourage you to think about, what really resonates with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what parts of Gretchen's project are you curious about? Which insights feel the most relevant to you in your own pursuit of happiness?
Okay, so picking up where we left off, Gretchen has just finished the first half of her happiness project. She's made some pretty significant changes in her life. She's boosting her energy, she tackled the clutter, she's strengthening her marriage, and she's rediscovering that playful side of herself. But as she starts the second half of the year, she starts to crave this deeper sense of meaning and purpose.
Okay.
And this is where she dives into the realm of, are you ready for this?
And I'm ready. What is it?
Eternity. In August.
Oh, okay. Eternity sounds a little heavy.
I know, right?
What does she even mean by that?
It's not about, the afterlife or anything like that. It's about cultivating a sense of contentment, gratitude, and appreciation for the present moment.
Okay.
Gretchen wants to connect with these deeper values, those things that sometimes get lost in the busyness of everyday life.
So it's like she's looking for a more, grounded, meaningful connection to her life.
Exactly. So how does she explore this?
Yeah.
She decides to do something kind of unconventional. She reads memoirs of catastrophe
Oh.
while she's on a family vacation. I know. So we're talking books about people facing some really serious challenges, like cancer and brain tumors.
Oh, wow.
These life-altering events. Even her husband was a little taken aback, are you sure you want to be reading that on vacation?
I can see his concern because it seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Right.
To immerse yourself in these stories about hardship when you're trying to relax and enjoy your family.
Yes, it does. But Gretchen is on to something here.
Okay.
She realizes that reading about other people's struggles, especially when she's surrounded by her loving family on a sunny beach, it makes her appreciate her own life even more.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's this stark contrast.
Yeah.
And it just highlights, the good fortune she has, even amidst the challenges.
It's like she's intentionally creating a space to, reflect and feel grateful.
She is. And this leads her to one of her most profound insights, her third splendid truth. The days are long, but the years are short.
I love that. It's so simple, but so true, right?
It is. It really makes you think about how quickly time flies and how important it is to really savor those moments, the big and the small. And that's why she starts keeping a gratitude notebook.
Oh.
Every day she writes down 3 things that she's grateful for.
I love that. What were some of the things that she listed?
She realizes that she's been taking for granted some of the most important things in her life. Her family, her health, even just, living in a safe and stable society.
Yeah, those are huge.
It's a good reminder to appreciate that foundation of happiness, right?
Right.
Those things we often overlook because they're always there.
Yeah.
One little detail I love, she mentions how grateful she is to live in an apartment instead of a house. No yard work, no shoveling snow.
That's awesome.
Simple city living.
Simple city living, I love that. It's such a great reminder that happiness is so subjective.
It is. What brings one person joy could be a burden to another.
Yeah, totally.
So it's about appreciating, what's unique about your life and finding the good even in those seemingly mundane details.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Gretchen even finds a way to be grateful for no news.
Okay.
So her husband has this doctor's appointment, and she's anxiously waiting for his report. And when he finally calls, he's like, no change. And she realizes that that's actually the best possible news she could have gotten.
Oh, wow.
It's a beautiful example of how shifting our perspective can lead to gratitude, even when we're feeling uncertain.
Totally, totally. It's like reframing those moments of worry and anxiety
Right.
into opportunities for appreciation.
Right.
Because sometimes the absence of bad news is the best news.
It is. It really is. And Gretchen, she doesn't stop there.
Okay.
She challenges herself to cultivate gratitude even when she's feeling negative.
Oh, wow.
So when she's annoyed about, taking her daughter to the doctor, she tells herself, I'm grateful for taking Eleanor to the
Right.
doctor. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but she finds that just by reframing those thoughts,
Hmm.
it actually helps shift her mood.
It's like she's really training her brain
Mm-hmm.
to look for the good,
Yeah.
even when it's not easy.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that Gretchen starts to, like, explore spirituality during this phase of the project.
Yes.
So what does that look like?
So she decides to study the life and teachings of, have you heard of her?
No.
Saint Therese of Lisieux,
Yeah.
a Carmelite nun. She was known for her little way of spirituality.
Okay.
So what drew Gretchen to her teachings? She was really drawn to Saint Therese's focus on finding joy in the ordinary, doing small things with great love, and then putting the happiness of others before her own.
That's beautiful.
It's a really relatable approach to spirituality, don't you think?
Yeah, it's not about those, grand gestures or elaborate rituals.
Right.
It's about finding meaning in those everyday moments.
It is. And it aligns so well with Gretchen's whole project of finding happiness in her everyday life.
Hmm.
So she moves into September, and she kind of shifts her focus to creativity and self-expression. And she sets a pretty ambitious goal for herself
Okay.
to write a novel in a month.
A novel in a month. Wow. That's serious.
It is. Did she do it?
Yeah.
She did. She actually participated in National Novel Writing Month.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's this challenge for writers to just churn out like 50,000 words in 30 days. And Gretchen not only finished the challenge, but she found the process incredibly rewarding. Even though it was a lot of work, it was that feeling of accomplishment, of growth,
Yeah.
that really brought her joy.
It's a testament to, the power of setting those big goals
Yeah.
and then really committing to seeing them through. And it kind of highlights something Gretchen calls the atmosphere of growth.
Yes, and she realizes this atmosphere of growth, it's so essential for happiness. It's not just about reaching the goal, it's about the journey itself,
Yeah.
right? The challenges, the learning, expanding our horizons. It's about engaging in those things that push us outside our comfort zone,
Yeah.
that help us discover new capabilities.
It's like embracing that process of becoming
Yes.
rather than just focusing on the end result, right?
Exactly. And one thing that Gretchen notices during this time is how easy it is to get caught up in the anticipation, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Of reaching a goal instead of enjoying where you are.
It's like that I'll be happy when
Exactly.
mentality. We're like,
Mhm.
oh, I'll be happy when I get that or when I achieve that.
Right. We're putting off our happiness,
Yeah.
thinking it lies somewhere in the future.
Yeah.
But Gretchen argues that the fun part isn't supposed to come later. Now is the fun part.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a good reminder to savor that journey,
Yeah.
even when it's tough. And so, besides writing a novel, Gretchen also decides to tackle another challenge, mastering a new technology.
Okay.
So she's always loved making books.
Hmm.
And so she decides to learn how to use like bookbinding software and equipment.
Wow, that's cool. So it's like she's combining her passion
She is.
with a new skill. Sounds like a recipe for fulfillment.
It is. And while she does find the process like a little frustrating at times,
Yeah.
she ultimately finds it so rewarding.
Hmm.
And this ties back to that earlier realization about being Gretchen,
Yeah.
embracing your authentic interests and letting go of the things she thought she should enjoy.
It's about giving yourself permission, right?
Yes.
To pursue those things that light you up, even if society might not think they're productive or worthy or whatever.
Totally, totally.
Mhm.
And speaking of being Gretchen, she actually makes a conscious decision about her TV habits.
Okay.
So she and her husband, they decide to cut back on watching TV. Not because they think TV's like inherently bad,
Right.
but because they realize they're not really watching it mindfully. It's become this kind of passive activity that's taking up their valuable time and energy.
It's about being intentional with your time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And choosing activities that, align with your values.
Exactly. And Gretchen takes it a step further, and she makes a bold move.
What is it?
She stops reading books she doesn't enjoy.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Damn revolutionary.
Yeah. How many of us have slogged through books feeling obligated to finish them?
All the time.
Whether it's because we started them or someone recommended them or whatever,
Yeah.
and we feel guilty if we don't.
We feel so guilty.
Even though it's not bringing us joy,
Yeah.
it's about giving ourselves permission to prioritize those things that
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, yeah.
And she applies that same principle to letting go of books she has read.
Hmm.
She declutters her bookshelves,
Yeah.
donates bags of books
Mm.
to make space for those new discoveries.
It's like she's literally and figuratively creating space for more happiness.
Yes.
And so as she moves into October, she dives even deeper into this idea of mindfulness and becomes really fascinated with the concept of, have you heard of this?
What is it?
Koans.
Koans, those paradoxical riddles
Yeah.
that are used in Zen Buddhism.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, interesting.
Provoke enlightenment.
Mm.
So how do koans even fit into her happiness project?
She realizes that she's been collecting her own personal koans for years, these enigmatic phrases,
Oh,
things
yeah.
that really made her think.
Okay.
One of her favorites is from Robert Frost. That line, "The best way out is always through."
Ooh, I love that.
It's a good reminder, right?
Yeah.
That sometimes you have to face those challenges head on if you want to grow.
Yeah.
It's like these little nuggets of wisdom, right?
Totally.
That stay with us and can offer guidance. Did she have any other personal koans?
Yeah, tell me more.
So she also explores this idea of true rules.
True rules. Yeah, like these unspoken beliefs that
Mhm.
guide our actions.
Hmm.
So, for example, one of her true rules is my kids, Jamie, and work are my top priorities.
Okay.
So it's a simple statement, but it shapes everything, right? How she spends her time, her decisions.
It's like identifying those core values that really drive our behavior, even if we're not consciously aware of them, right?
Right. And Gretchen realizes that some of her true rules, they actually conflict with each other.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how can everything be a top priority?
Right.
So it's a good reminder that life is about balance
Hmm.
and making choices that align with her values, even if it means making some tough decisions.
Yeah, totally. And realizing that, we can't do it all.
You can't do it all.
And that's okay. It's okay.
It's about those conscious choices, right?
Mm-mm.
Of what matters most.
Exactly. And she mentions a true rule she learned from her mother, which is the things that go wrong often make the best memories.
Oh, I love that.
It's such a nice way to reframe those, inevitable mishaps that we all experience.
Yeah. And it's true. Sometimes those unexpected detours lead to the most memorable experiences. And Gretchen continues to, stimulate her mind in new ways. She tries hypnosis. She does laughter yoga. She starts drawing. She even revisits music from her past.
Wow, she's really, exploring it all.
She is. It's all about exploring those different avenues for creativity, for mindfulness. And what's great is that she doesn't, shy away from the things that don't work for her.
Yeah.
She tries laughter yoga, which is something that's popular
Right.
and beneficial for many, but she realizes it's just not for her.
It's a good reminder that it's okay to try new things
Mm-hmm.
and decide, hey, that's not for me.
Right. No pressure to conform.
No pressure.
It's about finding what works for you.
So as she wraps up October, she makes this decision about her eating habits.
Mm-hmm.
She decides to keep a food diary,
Oh, interesting.
just to kind of become more aware of, what she's putting into her body. And what she discovers is not so surprising. She's eating a lot of what she calls fake food.
Processed snacks.
Yeah, low in nutrition, high in calories.
Right.
It's so easy to fall into those unhealthy eating patterns,
Mm.
especially with the abundance of processed food that's out there.
It is. It's everywhere.
Everywhere, I know. And so this leads her to make a change. She decides to give up fake food, like cold turkey.
Wow.
And she finds that this act of self-denial is actually pretty satisfying.
Interesting.
It's about taking control of your choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And feeling good about what you're putting into your body.
Yeah, and this kind of ties back to that earlier resolution she made to give something up.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that sometimes subtracting things from our lives, it can actually add to our happiness.
Yeah. It's about simplifying,
Mm-hmm.
decluttering, and really focusing on what matters.
Right.
Like creating space for more joy,
Mm-hmm.
both physically and mentally.
Yes. And as we go into November, we see Gretchen kind of circling back to this theme of contentment.
Mm-hmm.
She sets a challenge for herself that she calls Pollyanna Week.
Pollyanna week again?
Again,
Okay.
where she's trying to see the good in everything, no matter how small.
So we talked about this before, but it's interesting how this theme of, choosing positivity
Mm-hmm.
keeps coming up.
It does.
For Gretchen, it's clearly an area she really wants to strengthen.
And as we've seen, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Even with the best of intentions, it can be tough to maintain that positive outlook, especially when you're faced with all these everyday annoyances.
Yeah.
But she also, continues to develop these strategies for cultivating a more positive mindset.
It seems like finding ways to shift our perspective, focus on the positive. That's a big theme for Gretchen.
It is. And her journey kind of gives us this roadmap, like how
Right.
we can actively, you know, cultivate more positivity in our own lives.
Hmm.
And remember, like earlier, how she decided to give up alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She reflects back on that decision.
Hmm.
And she realizes it wasn't just about, like, eliminating something negative. It was about, the positive aspects of self-control, making choices that aligned with her values. It's a reminder that sometimes saying no to something, it can actually make you happier.
It's so true. It's like those little acts of self-discipline. They can be surprisingly empowering.
They really can. And so as she heads into this last month of her project, December, she decides to focus on what she calls boot camp perfect.
Boot camp perfect? What is that?
It doesn't mean striving for like absolute perfection or anything.
Okay.
It's more about, really embracing those times when things are going well and appreciating them.
Oh, okay.
So savoring those little victories, right?
Hmm.
Acknowledging your efforts. And she realizes that she often focuses on what's not perfect rather than what is going well. Like that negativity bias, it sneaks in again.
Yeah. It's so easy to point out the flaws and overlook everything that's going right.
It is. So Gretchen's challenging herself to shift that focus, to celebrate those moments
Hmm.
when things are, boot camp perfect.
I love that. So it's like acknowledging and appreciating those everyday successes. It's like we should give ourselves more credit, right?
Sure.
For all the things that we are doing well,
Mm-hmm.
rather than dwelling on what we haven't accomplished yet.
Right. And as Gretchen is wrapping up this entire year-long experiment, she realizes some key lessons that really resonate with her.
Oh, I want to know what those are. What were some of the biggest takeaways from her happiness project?
So one of the most important ones is that she realizes that happiness is different from pleasure.
Mm.
We chase after these pleasurable experiences,
Phew.
thinking they're going to bring us like lasting happiness.
It's like that instant gratification trap, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But Gretchen learns that happiness, true happiness, it's more enduring.
Mhm.
It's a state of being. And it comes from, living in alignment with your values,
Mm.
pursuing those meaningful goals, nurturing those strong relationships.
So it's about creating that life that feels fulfilling and purposeful, not just chasing these fleeting moments of pleasure.
Exactly. She also emphasizes that happiness, it's not passive.
Mm.
It takes effort. It takes intention. It's about actively
Mm.
choosing to engage in things that bring you joy, that cultivate positive emotions, and then fostering that sense of connection with others.
Like happiness is a muscle
I love that.
that we have to exercise.
Yes. And she also stresses how important it is to know yourself.
Mm.
Understand your unique strengths, your weaknesses, your values, your preferences. Those are crucial if you want to create a life that truly supports your happiness.
It's about knowing what brings you joy,
Mm-hmm.
not what society tells you or what worked for someone else.
Exactly. And this is one of my favorites. Gretchen emphasizes that comparison is the thief of joy.
Ugh, so true. It's we get so caught up in that. Especially with social media.
Especially now. But Gretchen reminds us that we're all on our own unique journey,
Yeah.
and that true happiness comes from focusing on our own progress, not comparing ourselves to other people.
So celebrate your wins, big and small,
Yes,
and recognize that everyone's path, it looks different.
it really does.
Yeah.
And finally, Gretchen emphasizes the importance of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
She learns that true happiness comes from embracing both the good and the bad, those ups and downs of life.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging that life is not always perfect, that challenges, they're just an inevitable part of the experience.
Yeah.
And it's about finding ways to navigate those challenges with grace, with resilience, knowing that even in the midst of difficulty, there's always something to be grateful for.
So, Gretchen, at the end of her happiness project, she's not just a little bit happier, right? She's armed with this whole new set of tools and insights for cultivating lasting joy.
It's really inspiring to see how those intentional efforts
Mm-hmm.
can lead to such profound growth.
Mm.
And her journey really reminds us that happiness is not this destination, it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's about consistently making choices that align with your values.
Mm-hmm.
Nurturing those relationships,
Yeah.
pursuing your passions, and then finding that joy in those everyday moments.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the happiness project, what really stands out to you? What insights from Gretchen's journey Did they resonate with your own experiences? What's one small step you can take today to cultivate more joy?
Yeah. And remember, happiness, it's not like this one-size-fits-all formula. What worked for Gretchen might not work for you, and that's okay. The key is to experiment, try things out. Find what makes you happy and make it a priority.
Gretchen's journey is this beautiful reminder that happiness, it is within reach. It's not about these grand gestures or elaborate plans. It's about those small, consistent choices, right, that we make each and every day that create that more fulfilling, joyful life. So go out there and create your own happiness project, one step at a time.